Land. That could be the future for the rich farmland of the Riverina if a new CSG startup, Granger Energy, is successful in its bid to explore 5 petroleum leases in the area. APPEA, the gas industry's peak body, has warned that rural New South Wales will fall short on jobs, investment and energy if farmers deny gas companies access to land. But it seems many are not convinced as Lock the Gate protests mount in the Pilliga. Griffith on the Murrumbidgee River, world famous for billions of dollars in rice, wheat, grapes and fruit production, could be the next protest flashpoint. Sally Block reports.
It's Mother Nature's patchwork quilt of greens, golds, browns and reds. In between those lush green fields are irrigation canals that are rivers of gold for farmers producing billions of dollars worth of crops. But in the Murrumbidgee irrigation area, in and around Griffith, a new industry wants access to the land.
If they're not going to pay anything for it, why the hell should we prune it?
Today, the talk here at Bruno Bromble's place near Griffith is about plans for coal seam gas mining in the area. Over Christmas, the farmers discovered applications had been made by a new company to explore what's under the topsoil ground for coal seam gas.
The big concern is if they start digging holes and contamination of our fresh water. There's a lot of farmers here using bore water for irrigation.
It's a short-term project, coal seam gas. It might last 10 years, it might last 20 years. This area's been here for 100 years and hopefully it should be here for another 100 or more.
5 major petroleum leases lie over this region, and the company that owns the leases, Granger Energy, has applied for exploration licences. In a detailed written response, CSG explorer Vaughan Cullen says gas exploration
is clearly in the economic interests of the broader Griffith community.
And if drilling was approved,
appropriate mitigation and management strategies
would be put in place
to ensure there are no impacts to land, groundwater and surface water resources.
The locals are passionate about the 100-year-old irrigation area and its history. Helen Dalton's family farm borders a main irrigation canal. They grow many crops as well as corn that ends up on the city's breakfast tables as cereal.
To have them come in will disrupt areas, and every centimetre of land that's under irrigation is highly valued and productive. So even if they put down a drilling rig, you know, it is going to disrupt our and affect our productivity. It has to.
The prospect of mining for CSG has farmers anxious about water quality and availability.
We don't know about the hydrology here. There's little knowledge of it, and I'm not prepared to take that risk. And if we want to safeguard our future agricultural area and safeguard our health, then I think we should be very, very cautious about what we do.
The local mayor says it's one of the wealthiest food-growing areas in the state.
When I've seen stories on TVs where lakes have dried out next to a coal seam gas well, you've got to say, hello, you know, doesn't that send up signals that why even put it in jeopardy? Are we that desperate? I don't think so.
We're not completely against coal seam gas as such, but it doesn't seem to make a whole lot of sense in a designated irrigation area, which is crisscrossed by channels and drains and is reliant on clean water for food production.
Rice-growing farmers on the verge of a bumper crop are suspicious about the CSG process.
The method by which they do drill into the coal seams to extract the gas, there's a question mark over perhaps the effects on aquifers and how that might affect surface and groundwater and the interactions between the water that we use for irrigation.
In the wake of the Lock the Gate movement, industries in the north of the state affected by CSG have been granted critical industry cluster status and in some cases biophysical strategic agricultural land that is designed to protect them. Locals in the area can't understand why the state government hasn't afforded it to them.
That's what we're saying to the government. Hell, you went into the Hunter, you quarantined the vineyards, you quarantined the equine, which is horses. What's the difference between my vines and the vines in the Hunter? I would think zip.
Growers are looking to politicians to put the interests of farmers ahead of mining.
We're trying to look after ourselves, and if a particular government is not helping us, then we've got the right and the ability, and we will change the government.
Bill Heffernan is a Liberal senator for New South Wales. He's from the Riverina and owns property affected by the applications.
And as I said to the farmers, you've got to get together on this because you won't win on your own. And there are virtually no rights. They have a gateway process as a last sort of resort of appeal, but there's no gate in the gateway.
He's calling on the state and federal governments to exempt high-value areas like the Riverina from CSG.
Governments need to have the courage and the commitment to assess the value of agricultural land. And I mean, there are more people live in the western suburbs of Sydney than all of rural Australia, and most of those people think on the aisle at Woolworths and Coles, well, some poor bugger gets up at 4 o'clock in the morning and milks the cow.
Jeremy Buckingham says the Greens and the farmers are at one on mining. The Greens are introducing a motion into state parliament to afford protections to farmers. He accuses the government of lining up with mining companies.
Those Riverina farmers don't even know who to apply to. So the whole system in New South Wales is a schmozzle. It's all about the government giving the pretence of protecting farmers, but behind closed doors, they're greenlighting this industry and handing out licences over our key farmlands.
The farmers here aren't afraid of a fight. Just a few years ago, protests in Griffith saw the ripping up of the Murray-Darling water buyback plan.
I will never forget what I've seen today, a truly memorable, powerful and moving demonstration of people power. Thank you.
If a Riverina decides to close down because of the coal seam gas coming in this region, New South Wales won't have another irrigation area like it ever again.
So there are serious issues which, in the rush for royalties, have overpowered the long-term interests of farmers and Mother Earth. I mean, we're going to look back, if we're not careful, in 50 or 100 years and say, my God, how did we let that happen?
Sally Block reporting, and Primary Industry Minister Katrina Hodgkinson said today a rigorous assessment process will apply. You can read her statement online along with responses from Granger and APPEA.